taking to the great outdoors in a backcountry-capable vehicle has never appeared more desirable in the past as it is in this age. Especially amongst the younger generations. The perceived freedom involved with packing it up and ditching the day-to-day grind is high on the totem pole of wants and needs. Whether it be for a few days or several months to even years, a growing attraction to a ubiquitous rejection of the conventional work-or-life balance is gaining steam, with off-road capable vehicles directly in the crosshairs. It's from here at the principled merits of both off-roading and overlanding come into play. But, before we begin waxing philosophic on the mental and spiritual benefits of such activities, we felt it necessary to help settle the debate between the two forms of exploration. Namely, what's the difference between off-roading and overlanding? Yes, they are different in case you're wondering. And how do we define the types of vehicles and mindset of those who choose their form of transportation into the more untouched and unspoiled regions of our planet? Believe us, it's more than just social media promotion. Here, there's a willingness to survive, assess risks that deserve attention, and preparation for those longer hauls into the unknown. Where it all began. As far as overlanding is concerned, the historical roots of the term, not surprisingly, can be traced back to the Australian outback where ranchers would drive livestock across long distances in the open country or from market out to the far-reaching grazing grounds. In addition, we found that many of Australia's overland roadways were built during the 1940s and 50s, purposed to expand access to the outback and are still in use today by adventurous travelers looking to explore the challenging terrain in this desolate region. Historical roots can be traced back to the Australian outback. There's also quite a bit of documentation made available regarding European migrations into remote African regions by vehicle during the mid-century. Here, entire families would stock up on food and provisions, setting out for new adventures and new lives across the continent. It's also during these years where we see a growing prominence of the Land Rover serving as a trusted dependable vehicle for these excursions, a sentiment that will stick with the brand for decades to come. Off-roading. Push it to the limit. Out of the two options for exploration, off-roading is by far the most self-explanatory activity out there. It's here where we visualize the overly aggressive off-roader tearing across sand dunes, romping through muddied swamplands, or climbing steep rock faces in Moab. Needless to say, off-roading serves a strictly recreational purpose, sometimes with a daily driver that's been modified accordingly to handle such tough terrain and abuse. Priorities, then, for the off-roader are to test the limit of his 4x4 vehicle in an off-road course or round-trip adventure, always to return home at the end of the trip. We'll admit, though, that part of the confusion between both off-roading and overlanding is derived from a common medium, traveling off-road. However, as you'll read below, not all overlanding takes place off-road. Conversely, we find that the self-explanatory nature of off-roading diminishes this possibility while alluding to the finite nature of the journey itself. Meaning, off-roading is a shortened activity when compared to overlanding where not only are the vehicles of different appearances and purpose but with varying intentions as well. Think short-term adrenaline rush versus elongated lifestyle choice. Overlanding. The journey is the destination. On the other hand, the Overlander boasts an objective of extended adventure travel into the backcountry or cross-country/continent for weeks/months/years on end. It's with overlanding where adaptability and survival become paramount due to vastly changing terrains and conditions you could very well encounter while venturing into these untouched regions. We should also note that not all overlanders need to be beefed-up adventure mobiles in order to be considered as such. In fact, oftentimes overlander vehicles rarely stray from the beaten path, remaining on or close to an established road or trail throughout the journey. The Overlander boasts an objective of extended adventure travel into the backcountry. And it's this very journey where we find a core difference between the two activities, that is the purpose of overlanding is, in fact, the journey itself. Oftentimes there is no final destination associated with this lifestyle. Instead, A key characteristic to keep in mind for these types of vehicles is comfort. So, think of the basics when outfitting your rig. Maybe you don't need that over-the-top Mars rover after all. This is especially true when considering the age-old notion that more bells and whistles inevitably lead to more room for error and malfunctioning, something you want to avoid in a remote region. Consider the basics instead, keeping warm, dry, and safe from all sorts of predators. With overlanding, you're in it for the long haul, so you better consider what's important for this lifestyle choice rather than what you've been sold by slick marketing techniques. Final thoughts. It's all about lifestyle choices. What all this boils down to are the basic yet malleable lifestyle principles we all tend to adhere by on a daily basis. For instance, do you possess the conviction and vehicle to take to an extended life on the road, touring across countries and continents in the process, or do your desires for adrenaline simply exist outside a 40-hour work week? These are the key points to consider when deciding upon overlanding versus off-roading. Remember, if there's one takeaway to consider, it should be understood that distance traveled is a defining factor between both off-roading and overlanding. Nothing can beat the feeling of self-sufficiency and independence from both means of exploration. It's all about getting out there and experiencing it for yourself. Additionally, what's also important to consider is the amount of supplies required for a sufficient overlanding experience. Meaning, while an off-road trip may only require a couple days' worth of provisions, true overlanders could go weeks without encountering any services. Needless to say, planning here is key, as fuel and food will soon become precious commodities while traversing deep into an off-the-grid territory. Our best advice: understand your desires, lifestyle choices, and keep things as simplified as possible, since there's little to no need for an obscenely complicated outrigger vehicle in either case, though it doesn't hurt to come prepared while foraging into any unknown less traveled territory. Nothing, however, can beat the feeling of self-sufficiency and independence from both means of exploration. It's all about getting out there and experiencing it for yourself.